The last time the Americans elected a cripple for president, his wife ended up running things behind the scenes. It wasn't so bad, really. She was actually a pretty good president. I'm just saying, a lot of people think there was already a female president. Her name was Eleanor Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt had some health issues near the end of his term. In fact, throughout the length of his term, he was... It's amazing to me that a lot of people still don't know that he was in a wheelchair. See, back at the time, we're talking in the 30s and the 40s, they had a radio, but they didn't have TV, right? A lot of people didn't know he was in a wheelchair. They didn't go out of their way to publicize it, and the opposition didn't really play on it because they back in a time where there was more decorum in politics, I suppose, it would have been considered in bad taste. And so the reality is that a lot of the people that voted for Franklin Roosevelt simply did not know that he was in a wheelchair. Or that his wife did a lot of the traveling because he was not able to do that, right? It worked out okay. Franklin stayed at home, and Eleanor did a lot of things during that presidency. And like I say, a lot of people consider her to have been a co-president at least. I'm not exactly a fan of Bill Clinton, but at least he's to her left. And Bill versus Trump is a non-starter, if that was the actual election. I could never vote for Hillary. I'd probably actually vote for Bill. Now, I know it was always a team effort, so you say, what's the difference? Whether Hillary's president and Bill's the advisor, or Bill's president and Hillary's the advisor, does it make a difference? Well, yeah, Hillary was always very influential and everything. I get that. But the things that they disagree on, or we think they disagree on, are actually exactly my fears. For example, look at the policy towards Russia in the 90s, and then compare that to what we're hearing from Clinton. Russia and the United States actually had good relations in the 90s. And a lot of that had to do with the policy that Clinton created. Or look at the way that Clinton handled Iraq. Now, of course, the sanctions weren't great, but it's better than bombing them. Look at what she, pushed for. She voted for the war, whereas everything Clinton did was designed to prevent that. Right? He's not the hawk she is. And I would have actually liked to see him run for a third term. He would have beaten Dubya, and we'd live in a very different world. I don't think Gore would have been different than Bush, but Clinton demonstrated that he would have been on these core issues of foreign policy. It's not a perfect situation, granted. I have a pretty long list of criticisms, but the idea that Hillary may be unable to govern may actually be a good thing. I know Hillary wants to run on her foreign policy experience, but to me, what her foreign policy experience tells me is that this is a scary person to have commander-in-chief. But I look at her husband's foreign policy, and the Clinton foreign policy years, it was the most enlightened foreign policy since Roosevelt, right? If we could go back to Clinton's foreign policy, that would be great. But Hillary doesn't seem to want to go back to Bill's foreign policy. She seems to want to carry on George W. Bush's foreign policy. And so one way or the other, we're going to be in a situation where probably the only person stopping her from pushing buttons and blowing things up is Bill Clinton. I know that has very sexist undertones, but that's sometimes, the way things are is not the way you want them to be, right? It is the truth of it, and if you're just going to react with call me a sexist, then you're missing. You're not seeing things clearly, right? That is going to be the truth of it. She wants to blow things up. And if there's anyone that's going to convince her not to, it's Bill. Hopefully. And Bill will want to convince her not to, because he does have a more pacifist foreign policy. Or did. If we could, like I say, if in the end it turns out that she does have some disease and she can't govern, and I mean, I know you think that the vice president should do it, right? Well, good luck prying the power away from Bill there. I think Bill's going to want to have a say. Bill's like that, right? And there's precedent, like I say, look at the Roosevelt presidency. So long as she's alive and and occupies the office of the president, if you want to talk about lesser evils, I'm sorry, but putting Bill Clinton back in the White House is a lesser evil I can deal with. You can maybe even think about it like this. Bill had a decent world order set up, okay? He had, he had set the country up to be in a pretty good position moving forwards, okay? And then Bush happened, and a lot of things fell apart under Bush, okay? The domestic situation, the foreign situation, the financial situation. The country largely fell apart under George W. Bush, and Obama has been kind of not really willing to reverse any of it, right? The few things he did to try and, flip things back over were half-assed. I mean, he's not getting any help from the Congress, fair enough, but he's not pushing it, right? And he didn't. And he never really got a chance to, maybe he stopped things from falling apart completely, but he never really got a chance to turn things around. I think there's a certain level of historicity, right? There's a historical narrative in this idea of allowing Bill the opportunity to right things. And that might mean righting some of his mistakes as well, like the crime bill or the welfare reform bill, right? If anybody is going to, just hit Control Z on the Bush years, maybe Bush could do it, right? And if we could go back to 2000, if we could just erase the last 15 years, we'd be in a better spot than anything else we can think of. You can't destroy time. You can't undo things that have happened, really, right? But if we can get as close as we can to where we were when Bill left, and I mean the whole world, we'd be in a much better position than anything else we can imagine. I'm not one to look backwards, I'm usually one to look forwards, but in this particular circumstance, really nothing good has come out of the last 15 years. There's been nothing but catastrophe, nothing but disaster, nothing but, but regression. And to simply turn the clock back to the year 2000 and say, let's start over again, or to get as close to that as we could, we can even bring back Hillary here, really. And I'm not joking, right? Do it right this time. I can't think of anything more historically proper, okay, than giving Bill 8 more years to fix what his predecessors fucked up and hope the country gets it right this time. And if the way to do that is to put, Hillary in on her deathbed, whatever it is ailing her, that, in my view, is a better option than electing Hillary herself. I'm sorry. It's a little bit delusional, perhaps, but we can dream in our delusions, right? Again, I have a lot of criticisms for Bill Clinton, but I almost think he deserves the chance. to undo what his predecessors, or sorry, what his successors fucked up. Like history almost owes him the opportunity to set things right. It's the truth of it.